Welcome to Whole Lot of Wolves, episode 2 of season 4. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
I am Paul LePage.
And joining us again, our fantastic producer in New York City, Mr. Alex Batakis. How's it going, Alex?
It's going all right.
Yeah.
How are you guys?
What you drinking tonight?
I've moved on. I had about 2 Guinness and 4 Bud Lights at the bar because they were $3, and now I'm on some white wine with dinner.
Ooh, ooh. So I know you like whiskey. I found this new distillery in Houston called Lone Wolf, and I got a butterscotch pepper called Hot Scotch whiskey. And so it's got the butterscotch taste to start off, and then it's got the zap of the pepper. And it's when you come out for Tex Fest, we'll have to have a few of those. I think you'll like it as a bourbon man.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. My only concern with spicy drinks is what it will do to you afterwards. The stomach starts going. But seems like you're doing all right.
I'm doing fine.
Wonderful.
And Danny, another one of our resident drinkers. I'm sure today he drank a lot. Danny Paletti from Baltimore Wolves. How's it going, Danny?
Hey guys. It's been better, but cautiously optimistic despite the farce.
Yes. So let's get right to it. We are recording this on Monday night, just a few hours after Wolves put on a very spirited performance, ultimately lost 1-0 to Manchester United at Old Trafford. But it was really going to be the talk of the game, Paul, was going to be how well Wolves played, even if they did lose. And then somebody tried to take out Big Sassy, and it turned into just a VAR badge chip dumpster fire again. Have at it.
I hate those games at Old Trafford because literally the writing was on the wall of everything that could possibly happen in that game. That we looked bright, probably 50-50 first half, definitely had the better the chances. Pretty much similar into the second as well. But when you have those opportunities, especially there, or really any of the top teams, you've got to put one away because it's no shit, Sherlock. You score, you take the lead there. Two things are going to happen. Either they're going to come full throttle back at you and equalize and go on with the momentum, or they're going to come back at you. You'll soak up the pressure. You're going to hit them on the break and win 2-0. It'll be pretty comfortable. We can't be having the same old story again of last season before, of having 3, 4, 5 gilt-edged chances from the likes of Cuhna and Fabio. They're players that have got to be putting at least one of those away, and that's all that sours that performance for me, because everything else was pretty much perfectly executed, formation wise, tactics wise. I struggle to fault it really. Just those fine margins, that extra few percent of hitting the target, making the keeper work, ultimately putting the ball in the back of the net. We could have been riding off into the sunset having this complete victory. Now we're left licking our wounds thinking what might have been, and not through really anyone's fault other than extremely shoddy officiating.
Danny, I think you're like me where I can handle a loss. I can't handle being like openly cheated. Just, blatant. That's what that was. The only person I saw on Twitter, on TV, or anybody that said, oh, that's not a penalty was Tim Howard, who's a goalkeeper, of course.
Yeah, it was wild. You should see my buddy Edgar. He was livid. As you know, I've taken a more zen approach to this season. As I said, goals are just one small part of this game that we call football, and Wolves are sometimes not interested in doing that part of the game. And similarly, perhaps the Premier League is just one small part of the English football pyramid. So, maybe that's another thing that we won't be that interested in. But yeah, I take a lot of positives from it, but it was pretty hard to take. In preparation for coming on your show, I even, did a small amount of background work, which is unusual for me. But I just want to go through the list of people that I thought that it was a penalty. As you mentioned, Tim Howard wouldn't fully say that it's a penalty because they don't usually give those. Okay, so apart from that, we have Robbie Musto and Robbie Earl who are with him. Believe there was a penalty. Also, Jeff Stelling, Gary Lineker, Gary Neville. Then the rest of the Monday Night Football crew, Karen Carney says he has every right to be aggrieved. Jamie Carragher didn't agree, didn't think there was enough for it to overturn. Okay. Laurie Dalrymple, that was a nice name to see again. He was aggrieved on Twitter. Ref Support UK, which is a great Twitter account that usually is very pro-referee, defends a lot of the choices they make, says no question that should be a penalty. Keith Hackett, former head of the PGMOL. Of course, John Moss, who's the one who apologized to Gary O'Neill, the manager of Select Group 1 of the referees. And now we're getting really to the bottom of the barrel, the people who I hate that you're making me agree with. Taylor Twellman on our side on this one. And the worst of the worst, Piers Morgan.
Piers Morgan. I was wondering if you were going to bring it up.
You've made me take the same side as Piers Morgan, Simon Hooper. What have you done? This is the worst crime you could possibly commit, is to put me and Piers Morgan on the same side of any issue.
Just brutal. What were some
out of those?
Go ahead, Paul.
It's interesting if John Moss is coming out though on the PGMOL, if they're making these apologies directly after the game now. Is that what it's going to be moving forwards? Because it was previously a day or two afterwards. It was, if it was a Saturday game, it was on the Monday or the Tuesday, and they've looked at it and issued Wolves an apology again. That seems different to me. So what purpose that serves, I'm not really sure. If it's to not necessarily take the sting out of it even, or not let it fester, just to get it out in the open straight away more for transparency, who knows? But I thought that was certainly an interesting snippet for them to come out so soon and say that it was a mistake.
They ought to just have a standing appointment with our manager right after every game.
Yeah. Well, and they need to do what American sports do, where they have the crew chief, in this case, the head referee, meets with a small media pool, not all the reporters. It's not like he has to go and sits at the table or anything, but there should be one or two guys that can go in there and ask, hey, what happened there? Or we're even seeing in the Women's World Cup, the referee can say something. I was just stunned he wasn't called to the when he was walking to the side. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, they're gonna look this over. But and then he throws a yellow card at O'Neill, and it was like, this is now something like that. You look at it and go, this is going to be a ref show from here on out.
Even the commentators alluded to that though, that he was going over to check the screens, and immediately thought, yeah, that's legit, because they have a different feed. They always know what's happening before it gets announced. They've got a plug into that communication between the VAR officials. So when that was mentioned, we thought, yeah, it was a gimme. I was just waiting for him to go over it. And then, as you say, he whipped out the yellow card, and all of a sudden the script was flipped and it was no penalty. They've checked it and overruled it. It's like, where did that even come from?
That was comedy gold. Also, there was Graham Lasso on the call when he was saying, oh, this is a definite penalty. He's going to come over and look at this. And he gives Gary O'Neill a yellow card. And he said right after that, he said, well, he's got to come up here and give me a yellow card for disagreeing with him too.
Yeah, and those announcers were, very poo-pooing on Wolves all throughout. And so the fact that, it wasn't even like, well, let's see it again. He looked at it the first time and was like, that's a penalty. That's a foul. Like, what are we even doing here? But unfortunately, that little bit of controversy did take away from what was a good Wolves showing. And I feel like even if the result had been the same at 1-0, man, I felt I left that game feeling a lot more positive, Paul, than I was expecting to.
I had a few more vibes of those first few Bruno games where it looked really good, but you were just waiting for that performance or that first 3 points. So, but I'm still nervous because first game of the season, going to Old Trafford, you know, you're gonna raise the game, you're gonna raise your game going there. They may not be at 100% just yet, so I do take it with a little grain of salt. So it's one of those where I'm just really eager to get to the next match and see if they can repeat it again, because it may not come on Sunday, on Saturday against Brighton, but I could see if they keep on doing performances like that to start out the season, they could pick up an early victory and that could set them off on really good momentum. And obviously to win a game, you're going to have to score. And hopefully that goal, one brings two, and then that adds a little bit of momentum as well, that someone may get on a streak if it hits the back of the net and suddenly you get a forward player scoring, and then all of a sudden he's 2 or 3 goals in and looking in really good form. So it's one that I'm not getting too overly excited with, because it is tremendously early days after such a crazy summer, you know, to put that performance out in the past week, just with a brand new coaching staff, brand new manager, to do that's phenomenal. So let's just get onto the new game and see if they can maintain it next game, see if they can maintain it.
Danny, that midfield was really exciting, and they really dominated large portions of that game. Lamina, you wouldn't even know Mason Mount was out there. Lamina had him in his pocket the whole time. João Gomez, fantastic performance. Matthias did good. What were your thoughts on the midfield?
Yeah, I mean, we're easily the better team for, I don't know, 80% of the game. Honestly, most of the first half was kind of all one-way traffic. I remember we were getting towards the end of the first half, and I thought, have they even had a shot? It was, I think, something Paul said, you know, thinking about Bruno Lage's first games in charge, it's like I feel a little bit more controlled in this, and maybe I'm sort of looking for minor differences here, but, you know, the Bruno Lage games were so chaotic. It was wild. And this was a bit chaotic too. There was a bit end to end, but I do feel like we were really restricting their chances. And also just their build up overall. We were winning the ball fairly high up the pitch, you know, either in their third or in the middle third, which is great to see. It's just something that we have clearly wanted to do for the past, 18 months and not always put together. And honestly, it was, a more complete performance than even some of our better performances last year, where we actually won. I mean, think about some of the best performances last year, against Liverpool at home. That Liverpool defense was so shaky, and we took advantage, and it was, fully down to us to do that. But I think United were not playing poorly. We were just controlling the game even when we were out of possession, and that was excellent to see. And I mean, a few people said this on Twitter, but that midfield with João Gomez and Mario Lemina especially, and then add in Matthias, who's just going to run past people. I mean, you're going to be very hard pressed to outrun that midfield. Any team in this league is going to struggle to outrun that midfield.
They're all over the place. I mean, Gomez was everywhere. It was so much fun to watch. And like I said, Lamina was a brick wall as well on Mason Mount. Like, it was a lot of fun. Paul, I really feel like all that was missing was a goal from Cuhna, and this would have been his coming out party. Like, just really spectacular performance, some great runs, fending off fouls and still getting breakaways. I mean, what was your thought on him?
My thoughts were was this the start of a body of evidence that proves he can play that number 9 role, and not the out and out classic number 9 role in terms of like a big target man or the role that Raul used to take up, but a completely different profile that he's able to drop deep, pick up the ball, beat the man and create a move from there. So it just shows to me what a potentially a good pre-season could have done for him. And if it wasn't for fine margins, if he'd have scored tonight, you're easily talking about a 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10 performance as an attacking player. Such was his threat. Now, I think the only, not to be too down on it, is not him per se, but when he is in that more central role, that's when you need a tremendous, much more output from those two players alongside him, however they line up. In flashes, I thought we did see it from Neto, and I thought we saw some bits of the old Pedro Neto that we all love and cherish, and long may that continue and he gets back to where he was. But I'm a little baffled about Sarabia being out there in that type of game and what he actually contributed. I think it was not painful at times. He just was anonymous. And when you've got everyone really chipping in and doing their roles diligently and causing problems to the opposition, that's when you need that extra 10%, that player to come in and be the cherry on the top of the cake, who can put the ball in the back of the net or do that wonderful piece of skill to set up an assist for someone to score an easy tap in. That's what we need from those forward players. And as it stands, it wasn't a game for Sarabia tonight, and I'm struggling to think of when it will be.
Danny, do you agree with Paul that Cuhna is showing he can be that number 9 up top, or would you still rather him play behind a true number 9 in more of a false 9-10 role?
Yeah, maybe. I think probably we all agree that he's best when he's playing alongside a striker. I think the conundrum for Gary O'Neill and probably Lopetegui before him is, how to get all those players on the field and still keep us defensively sound. I know that they're probably trying to load up midfield, and so they don't want to commit so many players to those forward positions. But I mean, the problem is he can get so isolated, and he's honestly really good. It's surprising sometimes how his dribbling ability goes under the radar when you've been watching Adama Traore for years, and now you have Mateus also, who's like gliding past people. But I mean, we're regularly seeing him pick up the ball in deep places and then just get all the way almost to the opposition box. And it's really impressive. But the problem is we just end up with no one around him. And it's like, it can be frustrating that he misses those opportunities, but also it's fully understandable that he's just made this huge sprint and you're asking him to shoot usually from a not very optimal angle. We really have to be getting the ball to someone else in that moment. It's fine for him to be setting those things up, but we just don't get enough players in the box. And that's the times when we look good, is when we're actually getting players in the box. I love that we have some of these, some of our midfielders really have an instinct to go up there. Like, I mean, Mateus, obviously, but also João Gomez, even though he's, more known for his defensive work, he really does know, like, when it's time to push up and be a part of that attack. And that's when we can use Mateus best. So whether or not he plays with a striker, we need to see people moving up with him. I think ideally it's with a striker, and I think ideally it's with Fabio, because they seem to have a pretty good understanding. But honestly, I'm happy with all three of them. Him and Fabio and Sasha seem to all link up very well in whatever combination. So as long as we're playing two of them, I'm probably going to be happy.
Paul, I thought Fabio, he wasn't on long, but I thought he really showed a lot of positives in the fact that he wasn't tentative at all. The ball came towards him and he was shooting. And that's what I like to see out of a number 9, is just keep shooting the ball. You see that from a lot of the big guys. that do it. What were your thoughts on his short appearance?
Confidence-wise, it looked there, which was good. The positions that he was getting into was good. Again, if you're potentially expecting him to score one of those opportunities, you might be looking at a player that's not 35 million pounds, but 50 to 60 in that bracket. So is he one that needs 3 chances to score one rather than 2 to score one? So that could be a factor. But in terms of that setup and the way they're playing, there is some positive vibes with what he was doing tonight that could bode really well if he's played as more of a distinct 2, especially at home. If it is Cuhna as the 10 behind him, I think that could do really well. And likewise, that there's definitely a different dynamic to bringing Kolasinac on as well. That totally different type of player as well. So we've had such a shit summer, but all of a sudden we've got three options to form 2 partnerships around. So it's it'd be pretty exciting if it was to click with one of those moving forward for sure.
So, Danny, who was your man of the match for Wolves? I mean, obviously the midfield did great. Cuhna did great. Semedo also probably had his best game in a year, at least. Who's your man of the match?
Yeah, it's hard to pick out anybody who had a particularly bad game. You know, there were some shaky moments from the defense, but it was also because they didn't have to do a ton most of the time. I mean, I know Saw sort of flapped a bit at the goal that they scored, but otherwise, to a man, most of the players who were involved were great. I think I have to give it to Cuhna. I mean, it's a bummer that he didn't score. I think he probably should have. I think you could make that argument. I think if he's playing alongside of someone like Fabio, like if Fabio gets 60 to 90 minutes and Fabio takes the shots that he took, I think Fabio's scoring. But otherwise, Cuhna was just running the entire time. And it was such an impressive performance. They called it out on the broadcast too. It's just like he was picking up balls from deep and running, like I said, box to box. He was also pressing constantly. Yeah, I have to give it to Cuhna.
Alex, I need to have you make the call here with Lopetegui gone. Are we still doing our lunch awards, or is that gone now that the
no,
free lunch?
Absolutely not. I want no part of that. I'm still angry.
Paul,
take that pizza and shove it.
Wow. Alex, feeling very rough about it. And that is one thing, Paul, we haven't addressed the elephant in the room, which was, hey, you called 50-50 and you were closer than the rest of us. What were your thoughts when it finally went down and Lopetegui hit the road?
It was a weird feeling because in some respects, it was quite a relief that you'd had such a summer of uncertainty right from May, and you had these intervals of Balaji coming out with interviewing him and he's not happy and all this, and then he's staying, great, we can get behind that, and then there was more issues that came to light. So for me, it was at least they've cut the cord, it's been done, move on. To like, could it have been the best thing ever for the Wolves to have him as coach? Maybe, but could it have just been a whole bunch of baggage that if someone was that committed and that invested and really wanted to pull in the same direction of everyone else, wouldn't have they just got on with it and reading it out? So was it an element of selfishness at the end of it as well on his part? And does that mean there's an element of good riddance as well. So I'm not for any moment saying Fosun are blameless. I think it's definitely a two-way street on accountability for both parties in terms of ownership and manager. But it's been a relief, and I get the somewhat of an anticlimax of Gary O'Neill and people looking at that as a looking at that negatively. I'm just looking at it as some freshness, and at least there's someone who wants to be here, is going to come here, and is going to work diligently. Is going to block out the noise and see what happens. And hopefully we saw a few of those green shoots tonight. So draw a line under it, move on. Let's see what happens this season.
Danny, do you think part of the players' performance today was in response to Lopetegui leaving because essentially you guys aren't good enough? Is essentially what he's been saying all summer, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of that. I don't know if it's directed, exactly at Lopetegui, but I agree with a lot of what Paul said. I think there's a lot of frustration amongst, at least I'll just speak for myself, but I see a little bit of on Twitter, with a coach who doesn't seem to want to just get down to work with what is clearly a very talented group. And as Paul said, the usual caveats, Fosun not blameless, we've made mistakes, but I think it's also the performance from the players, like you said, ever since that Celtic game, where, I mean, as far as we know, they probably knew he was on his way out before then. And then he told Hobbs after that game that he wanted to leave. So, like, after that point, they have to know.
Yeah.
And the game against Rennes looked great. I mean, we all watched that and saw, the most cohesive, most coherent Wolves performance that we'd seen in 18 months. And I think it's not just Lopetegui throwing them under the bus a bit, which we all felt was a bit unwarranted. I mean, I get putting pressure on the board to spend some money, but I mean, this is clearly a better team than we had 12 months ago. It's probably a better team than maybe we've had for most of the time we've been in the Premier League. But it's also the media in general. I mean, here I'm gonna, say the thing that I'm aggrieved about. But listening to all the preseason predictions,
Oh yeah,
saying, "Oh well, Sheffield and Luton definitely going down, and that third spot, it's gonna be tough, but have to give it to Wolves. They look terrible. They've sold all their best players. Blah 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 blah." And it's like it's been chaotic. I'll give you that. I mean, and it's not ideal. It's not good in any sense. But if you look at that group of players and the way they've been playing in preseason, where they're clearly like together, there's like an identity there, and they want to play together. I can't imagine how you look and say that that's the team that's going down over a team like Everton that's escaped relegation the last 2 years by the skin of their teeth. It is, and I'm sure that they see that stuff too. Every piece of media I've seen has said Wolves very likely to go down, and they're looking around saying, "How? We're better than that, and we're going to show you at Old Trafford on first night." And they did. I mean, it felt very much like that kind of reactionary performance, and I hope it keeps up.
Like this, the chaos of the summer aside, I'll judge the squad on 2 points. The first is today, which is the start of the season, versus the bench last year against Leeds. The bench today was infinitely better. Plus, you didn't have last season's top scorer on it or most assist maker with Podence. You didn't have Johnny, who's a veteran, either. Probably one question mark on there in terms of youth is Joe Hodge, who probably could be due a loan. Out of that's much more better than it was this time last year. The second point will be when the transfer window closes, but could it be at that point that what Hobbs has been saying actually bears fruit, and it will happen late? And I don't expect a flurry of signings, but those 2 or 3, maybe for depth, especially in the centre back, maybe another forward or maybe another wide player if Podence goes. Maybe loans, they explore that market a little. If we are playing with this financial issues around our neck, then you've got to be smart, you've got to play smart, and you've got to utilize all the avenues that are open to you. You don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face and say, I'm not going to loan a player from a top 6 team to better their team in the long run. You want to do it to better yours in the short term. So if that happens at the end of the transfer window, we could have a really decent squad. And it is just naivety of those talking heads and not a lot of thorough research that have seen all of these departures and chaos around the coaching staff. But really, you've lost one legitimate starting player out of that 11 who, when he wasn't playing for 2 games last season, the team still performed pretty well. So let's see again when the window shuts. That's going to be another interesting point.
Yeah, the only time I was really concerned during the game today about the squad itself was I felt like we do need another out wide player because I felt like Neto probably needed to be taken off at some point. I mean, he was running around a lot, doesn't always make the best decisions either. The other thing that has me a little concerned is the referees handing out more yellows for time wasting. This has a potential to really hurt those wide players and the fullbacks as well, the guys who are mostly doing the throw-ins. Because some of those throw-ins, they're guarded. You start to panic. I think they're going to be doing more of those, but those yellows will start to add up, and that's what concerns me. And when the depth would come in, Danny.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that too. And just a side point, it's so weird to me. I mean, I fully am on board with cutting down on time wasting. It's a scourge, blah blah blah. But like, it's just like the throw-in thing. I think I take offense at it because they're so much more likely to give those yellows early on because they think like, oh, we'll set the example. But at the same time, it's like we also know that no one is wasting time at that point. It's literally just they're guarded. I noticed one point during this game where I think it went out on the far side and Nelson Semedo picked up the ball for a throw-in.
Just threw it.
And the ball had recently been switched to that side. So there's almost no one over there on either team, but there's more United players than Wolves players. And he's worried about getting it in time. Well, there's 2 Wolves players, one who's the center back, so probably Craig Dawson, in the box. And there's whoever's in front of him, probably Pedro Neto, like 20 yards up the field. What's he supposed to do? And it's such a weird, arbitrary choice for a lot of it, where it's just like I don't really understand why that's the line that we're drawing, I guess. And it is something we're gonna have to look at. And I am worried about squad depth in that regard, because if you have players who are out for a game or eventually out for 3 games for accumulation of yellows, it's just another thing that's going to help the big teams that can have a huge bench full of backups. I mean, yes, we should have a backup in every position, but it's just like, I don't know, tell that to Luton or Sheffield, who like are barely scraping together a team that can play in the Premier League in the first place. And you're handing out these yellow cards for like people who aren't even wasting time. It's so odd to me.
Aït-Nouri is going to get a double yellow at some point. He's going to get sent off because he's going to have like one of those time wasting things. And then he just has so many reckless challenges. I figured he'd be one of the first subs to come off because, he's playing with a yellow after 15 minutes. Yikes. That's not a guy you want playing on a yellow for that long. It's like him and Lamina. Those are the 2 where I'd be like, I don't really know about it. So Paul, overall, you feel a lot better about the squad after today, even with no points?
Yeah, I do. I think we do have to look past all of that noise, and we do have to take those arrivals that came in January as a wider body of work of that's the transformation of the squad that we've seen. It hasn't necessarily happened this summer, but the ball started rolling in January time. So that's the lens that I'm looking at it in. But you always expecting in the summer and the window opens and you get all these £100 million deals happening, and there's little old Wolves getting docketed back on a free transfer. So there's that to contend with. But for the most part, I think we're in pretty good shape. I think there's still opportunities that we know where we do need that cover, and still at the same time you are crossing your fingers and your toes and praying to the gods of injury that they can look favour on us for a season.
So stepping away from Wolves for a minute, Alex, it was a sad day as we saw Fulham tweet out a picture of some baby oil. Very sad. But what do you think about Fulham having both Raul and Adama now?
I think it's weird for a team that I think probably came into this year with greater ambition than Wolves to be taking some Wolves retreads. That being said, I did bet on Raul to score on Saturday, and he very nearly did with his final touch of the game and what looked like a classic Raul chance, but he hit the post and was subbed off for Mitrovic. So I am smarter than to say that they will not do well at Fulham, because I don't know, it would just be really Wolves for Adama to finally go there and find end product, and for Raul to be the guy on the other side of it. So in some ways I'm excited for Marco Silva to coach them, because they are undoubtedly two players I still root for, as much as that hurts and as much as it feels like Fulham and Wolves are kind of like playing in the same pool this year.
Well, my hair is safe, unfortunately. I was going to gladly dye it blonde. Paul, the game I'm thinking about going to, I'm kind of looking at the schedule. Even before this, I was thinking about Fulham at Wolves in March. I think that might be the game now. What do you think the atmosphere will be like because of how beloved Raul is? And there is a section of the fan base like us that still loves Adama, and there's a section that can't stand him. What do you think that atmosphere is going to be like?
I think they'd both get really good like welcomes, like when the names are announced, or if either come off as subs. I think the Wolves fan base would be pretty respectful, because regardless of like opinions on Traore, you can't not question just his overall impact for those glory days of what that team he was a part of accomplished, like especially the time in Europe and the goals and the partnerships forged there. So you wouldn't get any negativity, and but you just hoping and praying that it's just that they're able to be stifled.
I was going to say Danny, like it's a near certainty the two of them are going to connect for a goal with Molyneux, isn't it?
Oh, obviously. I mean, it's written in the stars, and it's not even. It's going to be like a Raul headed goal. It's going to be a classic.
Oh,
Adama
yeah.
puts it up to Raul. It's also going to be the only goal they score all season, but it'll happen at Molyneux, no question. I think Raul will get a good reception too, especially with the Lopetegui stuff last year and the Everton game.
In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets pulled just so he can get the proper goodbye from a game. And finally, Max Kilman, contract extension along with the captaincy. Danny, I think the captaincy we all thought, but the contract extension was kind of a surprise.
Yeah, I'm interested, how much they felt that they needed to protect their asset, and make sure he wasn't tempted away by someone else. I mean, who knows what was going on behind the scenes, but it's a perfectly pragmatic choice to me. I saw a couple people gripe online that we have no money for players, but we're gonna give him more money because presumably part of his new contract is getting paid more. Which whatever. I mean, I don't know. I think you're just protecting your asset. No one's. I don't think anybody at Wolves is looking further ahead than next summer. And if he ends up going to a big team next year, then that's fine. We're in the process of a rebuild, and those things might have to happen. But I think it's a perfectly prudent choice to give him a fresh new contract, make sure that Napoli can't come in for him this year, and then deal with whatever comes next year. It is interesting. I saw someone comment online. I want to say it was Gully, maybe, but saying that we went from a captain in Connor Cody who had these intangibles that we all knew that he had weaknesses in terms of his ability to play the position. But he had these intangibles to speak to the group and to shout at people on the field and whatever. And now we're going to a captain who has these great abilities. We know the ceiling that he has. He's so talented with his feet and whatever. But we also recognize that he has to improve in terms of his communication with other people and like his actual leadership skills. It's really interesting that we've like almost completely flipped that.
Yeah, Paul, I'm still a little kind of because of the fact he's not a very vocal guy. But then again, is it going to make that much of a difference? I don't know. If he wasn't named captain, who would you have liked to have seen get the armband instead?
Probably out of the starting 11 today, Lamina.
Mm-hmm.
I like center of the park. He certainly comes across well in media and what he does off the pitch as well. So that was one potential that stood out for me. Cuhna to a certain extent as well, that personality-wise stands out. So, leadership's a funny dynamic to define in football. So, is there one that checks all the boxes at this current crop? There's probably not. So, I'm not totally out on it either, but more through the fact that it's tricky to know where it falls.
Whole Lotta Wolves is self-funded, so if you're interested in sponsorship opportunities as a way to reach a niche audience, email hello@wholelottawolves.com for our sponsor packages. Just want to make a contribution as a listener who enjoys the show? Then head to buymeacoffee.com/WLWpod. That's buymeacoffee.com/WLWpod. We greatly appreciate any contribution. Up the Wolves.
All right, guys, to get us ready for our next game, which is Wolves versus Brighton. It's at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central on Peacock. We're here to welcome Paul Dorsey again from Stateside Seagulls. How's it going, Paul?
It's going well. How are you guys?
Well, pretty good. Well, last year, fantastic season for you guys, and as a result, you're playing in Europe. Number one, is it exciting? But number two, do you think it's going to affect the team this season? Because that is kind of a problem with us non-Big Six guys.
Yeah, I think that, you kind of have to look at West Ham last season and see what they did. They didn't do so well in the league, but then they ended up, winning the Europa Conference League. So it's definitely something that can happen. But I think that the way that De Zerbi kind of understands each competition, he's so focused on just the performance at hand. So he will take every single opportunity to win every single game that he has coming at him and put the best team out there. So I don't think he's going to, say, we're just going to go for the Europa League and not worry about the Premier League. I think they're definitely going to want to have the best 11 they can for each game. So I think that maybe we won't finish sixth again, but I don't think that we're going to have a relegation fight at our hands. So I think that it's going to be a little bit of a regression just in terms of not finishing the top six, but I think that it's definitely going to be feasible for us to have a decent European run, hopefully a cup run domestically, but then also staying in that top 10 in the Premier League. I think that's definitely achievable.
Hey, Paul. So as you guys sit here, it's mid-August as we record this. You've got a huge influx of money coming from Chelsea for the sale of Caicedo. So maybe it's, not necessarily reasonable to ask you what it is they're going to do with that money, because it could be TBD. I think the transfer was finalized within the last like 24 hours. But like, what do you think will happen with that? I mean, you guys are obviously great at this, but I don't think there's ever been a sale quite to this level for Brighton. So what do you think that influx of cash will mean for the club?
Yeah, it's challenging. It's crazy. I know that kind of our MO has been signing a bunch of like £1 million signings from Paraguay or wherever. So I don't think we're going to sign 110 players from Paraguay, but I think that, I know that we that we are in discussions for signing a potential replacement kind of for Caicedo. I can't remember his name, but there's maybe somebody coming from Lille for around 20 million, I think. And then we did sign João Pedro this summer for 30 million. He's our record signing so far. So that's already a splash of cash that we've had. Bart Verbruggen came in. He's a keeper. He came in for around £20 million. I know we were in talks with potentially Tyler Adams and Mohamed Kudus. Don't know if either of those signings are going to happen, but there's definitely momentum. And I think there's definitely, especially with Caicedo leaving, with McAllister leaving, opportunities for us to spend some of that money. I just don't know if we will and to what extent, because it's definitely something that we haven't done to that degree before. Obviously, I mean, nobody's had a signing like this before, really. So, or a signing go away and have that influx of cash come in. But it's going to be interesting to see how we kind of figure out our strategy with signing a bunch of younger players who don't cost a lot of money versus, having a European vision to look forward to and all this money coming in from Caicedo's sale. So it's going to be interesting to see what we do, but I think that we definitely will be seeing more incomings before the transfer window closes.
Is one of those guys going to be Coco Carasquilla from Houston Dynamo? Me and Paul are familiar with them. Gold Cup MVP. That'd be interesting. It wouldn't surprise me. And honestly, Brighton, they find players from who only knows where and makes it work, and then they sell them for £100 million a couple years later. So who knows? I'm not just pulling that out of my butt. I will say that's been the rumor amongst Dynamo fans, is that Brighton was one of the ones interested.
I haven't heard that one, but it wouldn't surprise me. Nothing surprises me with Brighton with transfers.
Look, anytime you got a guy named Coco with an afro on your team, it's an A+ for the fans.
We had Cuckoo Reyes, so I don't know if the fans are going to be too happy about that anymore. But
out of the current crop, Paul, who's the next potentially off this production line? And do you think this short-term profiteering, it's something that clubs of your stature and ours, and really any of the non-top six / Saudi-owned clubs, have kind of got to get used to, and it's not the halcyon days of loyalty and testimonials after 10-year service anymore?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, I think Simon Adingra is going to be that next kind of star. He already came in. He scored a goal on Saturday. He scored 2 goals in the summer series here in the U.S. And he's kind of a Matoma-esque player, came from USG last year. So I think that he could definitely be that player that comes in and kind of surprises everybody this season. But yeah, I think that, I think you're definitely onto something there. We have Lewis Dunk, Pascal Gross, Solly March. They've been at the club for ages now. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. They signed long-term deals in the summer as well. So there are definitely still players like that. But with the big money that comes in, with the players like Caicedo going for £100 million, for Chelsea coming in and basically taking our entire squad and our coaching staff and everything, we've seen where this can go, and we've seen where this can lead, just at Brighton specifically, and then across the Premier League and in Europe and everywhere in Saudi Arabia. So it's definitely a weird time, especially for Brighton, because we have our transfer strategy of signing young players and then developing them and selling them for large sums of money. It's kind of in our interests in a way to do that type of thing, but it does kind of feel a little bit like there may be something missing just in terms of, you want to see the players that you grow attached to at your club for a long time. And it definitely is hard to see like Caicedo leaving, McAllister leaving after maybe only playing 2-3 seasons with the club and having such great experiences watching them play and seeing where we can go with them. And I know that there's definitely going to be a crop of players like Simon Adingra coming in who are new, who could do the same things, but there is kind of that attachment that's missing a little bit.
So what are you guys probably going to throw starting 11-wise at Wolves on Saturday?
Yeah, so I think we have some injury issues. I know Lewis Dunk started this weekend. He didn't start at all during the summer series. He didn't play at all, but I would expect him to play alongside probably Jan-Paul Van Hecke at the back. Purvis Estupiñán and Matoma, they'll start most likely. Solly March will start. And then it's kind of a toss-up, maybe Evan Ferguson up top or maybe Welbeck, one of those two probably. Joao Pedro probably as well. And then in goal, probably Jason Steele, but there has been discussion that he may be switching back and forth with Bart Verbruggen. It's either going to be Jason Steele's the Premier League keeper and Verbruggen's the cup keeper, or they're just going to switch off every once in a while, and it's kind of hard to tell what's going to happen there. But I think that it's going to be a very similar lineup to what we had against Luton Town. I wouldn't expect too many changes. Maybe if Adam Webster's healthy, maybe if Veltman's healthy, they might start at the back. But otherwise, I think it's going to be pretty much the same as what we threw out against Luton.
Who's this Milner kid? Is he new? Is he? Has he been around a bit?
I've never heard of him. Is he any good? I don't. Yeah. No, if he was fantastic, and he really kind of did go under the radar on Saturday, but he looked like he fit in right away. And I mean, he didn't look like he was 37, 38 years old. He looked like he was 20 something. It's crazy. I can't believe that he's his age, 22nd year in the Premier League, and he just fit into the Brighton system like nothing changed.
Yeah, it really goes to show how astute you can be with fitting a profile of player within a team and a squad, regardless of age. So yeah, it's not necessarily those rough gems from overseas. It could be someone that's everyone's familiar with, but you get exceptional value for a season or two that you never think previously. So that's an astute pickup for sure.
Well, thanks, Paul. We really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
All righty. Thanks to Paul Dorsey from Stateside Seagulls for jumping on with us. Paul, what stood out to you based on what the other Paul was saying?
I just got horrible flashbacks to that away trip from last year, and some of the names that he started to mention I completely forgot about. Talking about which is the next player off the production line that they're going to sell for millions, and I totally forgot about Mitoma and what he can offer. So it has brought a few nerves back to the forefront of the type of opponent we're going to come up against on Saturday.
Danny, who are you scared of the most?
I mean, I think for me, it's probably Matoma. Although, I mean, Evan Ferguson is so impressive for such a young player. But we saw, I think, both home and away, how Matoma just shredded through even really good defenders that we have. I mean, obviously that away game at Brighton was an aberration for in a number of ways. But we just watched Nelson Semedo have such a good game defensively. but he also, I think, got torn apart by Matoma in that Brighton away game. So I am very concerned about that.
What do you think lineup wise, Paul, we're going to be looking at this game?
It's a tricky one. I think quality of the opponent's going to factor into it, even though we're at home. And there's an element of it that I would just like him to trot out a 4-4-2 and at least go for it with two dedicated centre forwards, if it's Cuhna and Silva, and see what trouble they can cause. Fight fire with fire to a certain extent. And we just hoping that the dynamism of our midfield can quell them a little more than it didn't do previously. And a little like tonight, how there was definitely cases of Lamina was being purposely sat more deeper or purposely on the shoulder of Fernandez at certain times to stop him from playing. So is that what they've got to do? They may set up more attacking, but go man for man in certain situations to try and stifle them, even though we're at home.
How about you, Danny? What are you predicting from the starting 11?
Yeah, I like what Paul said. I think that's probably what I would expect. Although I'll give you this as an alternative. You know, I could see a world where we don't really change anything. That, you know, the team that he put out to play United tonight, you know, I think was very much set up to control the game, whether in or out of possession. And I have to say that there must be something, you know, that maybe O'Neill and certainly Lopetegui have seen in Sarabia that shows that he's very useful for that. And I get it on some level, but I also see why people want a lot more from him. But I wonder if we'll do something similar where, you know, we're gonna feel out the game and we're gonna try to just control it as much as we can, even if we don't have a ton of the ball, and then see where we end up at halftime.
I could see Hee-Chan Huang starting in place of Sarabia. I think that's probably the obvious move, but I would like to see Cuhna and Silva together. I think that's kind of what most of the fans are like begging for. We just want to see what that looks like just once.
I think if you're going to have two people breaking for the goal, those are the two that you want. You know, they're not really the same types of players, but it is the only thing that comes close to reminding me of that, like Raul and Jota. Like,
Yeah.
We've sprung the counterattack, but we only have those two players. No one else is going to catch up to them. Who do you want those two players to be? For me, it's got to be Cuhna and Silva.
Mm-hmm.
So can I just ask, you know, if someone could explain to me maybe what if you drop Sarabia for Silva, you're really losing, because Cuhna and Silva's work rate are really high. Like, I don't think you're sacrificing balance on the defensive end that Sarabia brings, because he doesn't really bring any. So, like, what? I don't know. Like, what would you really need to change? And like, why is that too attacking as opposed to Sarabia playing where he was playing?
I think even
tonight?
strengthen the midfield as well. If Cuhna is naturally taking up that deeper position anyway, does he take up an extra body in the middle of the park, and that makes it more defensive? Not intentionally, just by the fact that that's where he likes to set the plays from. So is it better having him in the middle there, or Sarabia kind of floating about and more out wide anyway? So as it stands, I'm in more Camp Cuhna.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I look at Sarabia is it's not so much a whether you're going attacking or you're defensive. It's more like how much are you seeking to control the game? Like you know, I'll hold my hands up and say I'm no expert at any of this stuff. I'm just trying to get whatever I can off of Twitter and the couple of books that I have. But I see him still like kind of like Moutinho, or like the way Moutinho should have been played the last 12 months, which is that like he should be brought in specific games and probably at the ends of a lot of games when we're trying to control the game. Like you think about that game against Liverpool at home where Moutinho came on and was so influential. He sort of had the hockey assist for the final goal, but it's, like the little things that he does that like helps to gain back possession or to like start a counterattack are really useful. And I get that Sarabia is like probably extremely useful to a manager, but in a way that is very hard to see while you're watching the game. But
Coach
I
on the
agree that,
field.
like,
Coach on the field.
yeah, maybe that's it. I mean, but I admit that I would happily sacrifice him to see the Cunha Fabio two up front.
It just feels like a safe move where like Gary O'Neill has said like the one thing I want from these guys is to attack, and like they did that, but that attack would have been way more threatening if it were Fabio instead of Sarabia. Like you said, Danny, I feel like he's a really good bench option once you could get a goal, but that goal doesn't really look like it's coming without people hitting the target, and Fabio consistently did that in the 15 minutes he played or whatever it was.
Yeah.
He is also our best set piece taker, and it's a low bar, but he's our best set piece taker by a long, long shot.
Yeah.
You don't like Neto soaring it over people? Put João Gomez at set pieces. I want to see what he can do.
It's like every so often Saiss would line up to take a free kick, and then he'd hit the bar. And it's like, why are we having this guy take the look?
Yeah. Or finally with Neves last year. It's like last 3 games, suddenly he's taking him and we look great. I don't get it. Well, it's prediction time. Paul, you're not starting off good, man. Paul had a 1-1 draw out of this game, so he got no points.
I will caveat that was pre-Lopetegui leaving.
So what would you have done after the fact then?
I definitely said a 1-0 loss. Definitely.
Well, hang on. Did Paul get an apology from the PGMOL? He should have had a 1-1.
Yeah.
Paul, check your mailbox in the morning.
Me and Chris Fisher got 1 point each because we did say Wolves would lose. And Alex off to a hot start. 1-0 Manchester United. Unfortunately, it's a hot start.
Agreed.
Paul, what was it looking like on the website with the predictions?
Same. Everyone on the website, apart from me, predicted a Manchester United win, but it was still only Alex that went the 1-0 route. So he tops the early table with the 3 points.
So everybody be sure and go to wholelotofwolves.com to enter in your predictions each week. And here are ours. Danny, I'll let you start off. You had a good record last year. What are you thinking?
It's true. I have to defend certain level of performance here. I went into the United game feeling like I would take a loss as long as we looked good, and that is what happened, even though it should not have. But I feel similarly about the Brighton game. It's a home game, so I think we're right to expect a bit more. I would like to see us score. That would be nice. But I still think Brighton have been very good. I do think that although it's funny, I didn't watch the Brighton Luton game, and then when I looked it up, they scored 3 of their goals after the 70th minute, and 2 of them were like right at the end. And it just makes me wonder, especially against Luton. It's a little surprising to me. So maybe that means we have more of a chance than I thought. I'm still going to go with a Brighton win, but I think that we score. I'll say 2-1. I'm tempted to say 3-2 just because I'm still so burned from them putting so many goals past us last year. But I'll go 2-1 because I think defensively we've looked solid.
2-1 Wolves.
No. 2-1
Oh.
Brighton.
2-1 Brighton.
If it's
Okay.
2-1 Wolves, I'll be thrilled and my shirt will be off.
Alex, what are you going with?
Yeah, so just to compound on what Danny said, and I did watch almost all of the Brighton Luton game. The score was a little misleading because they started pouring them in at the end, and they were playing a team that's not a Premier League team. Like, I'm having a really hard time determining if I should be scared of Brighton based on what happened, or if that's just like, a Carabao Cup fixture that just was dressed up in Premier League clothing. Which it kind of feels like. So I'd be, I'm encouraged. I think Wolves get a point, and I'll say 1-1 because there's no way they're keeping Matoma quiet the whole game. He's absolutely filthy, even against Luton. But Wolves get on the score sheet and get a point in the standings finally.
Okay. Paul?
I was a bit more buoyed thinking about it after the fixture today, but then Paul Dorsey did bring me a little bit back down to earth and reminded me of how good they were and how good they could be. So I think I've got to say that a draw would be still a really good result. And I'm just deciding whether we are going to actually score or have we got it in ourselves to be pretty tight and stop them from scoring, but we don't score. So is it 2-2 or 0-0? I'm going to say, let's be positive-ish 2-2 draw.
Man. Guys, it's the home opener. They feel a little disrespected that they didn't win today, that they got hosed out of a point. We saw a lot. They were going up against a team that almost everybody has in the top 4 and really should have won on the road. By God, Wolves 2, Brighton 1. Let's go. Let's go. Up the mighty Wolves. Okay, Alex. It's everybody's favorite time. No stupid questions.
All right, let's get to them. We have a lot pertaining to, obviously, the VAR incident. We'll get through those really quickly before we get to some more of the fun stuff. So let's start first with Sharky. Sharky WWFC asks, if you were sat in the VAR room, what biscuits are you choosing? I'm assuming that's all they're doing, really, is just like the occasional badge check and snacking. Yeah. What would you go with?
So, Paul, in this case, are we saying biscuit is chips or cookies?
Yeah, you gotta take it as cookies.
Cookies? Okay.
Yeah.
I think they're going the Oreo, and I think they're doing like little contests to see who can do like the perfect like turn and stuff. And then they look up and go, oh shit, we missed something. Let's see. Manchester United, no penalty. So I'm gonna go with the Oreos. And then they're having dunking contests too.
Oh, what would you be eating up there? You got any biscuits that you're missing from back home?
My go-tos were custard creams, which were a little like Oreos, but not so much of a sweet. The inside was more creamy, not as sweet as the Oreo. But that's yeah, I'd be on the custard cream.
Josh. Danny, what's your VAR snack? Come on, you got to have something.
Building on Josh's idea of them being distracted by trying to separate the Oreo perfectly, I think it's got to be something with a lot of peanut butter. So like Nutter Butters, I'm going to say. Something that glues their mouths shut. So when Simon Hooper says, I don't know, should I take a look on the monitor? They are unable to communicate with him. And he just says, whatever, I'll just go with whatever I called initially.
That's funny. That's the penalty.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Did you say give Gary O'Neill a yellow card? Great, I'll do
that. All right, let's see. Let's go with Chris Fisher's question, last week's guest, friend of show and all of ours. This is a good one. Which wrestler's signature move was most reminiscent of what Onana did to Sasa.
This is Paul all the way, baby.
So it immediately stood out to me looking at that question and seeing the move that you really needed. It's a tag team move, so you really needed your tag team partner. But I'm going to go very old school, back to the late 80s, early 90s, when WWF was real and wasn't fake. It was the Legion of Doom, and it was Hawk who'd lift the opponent up on his shoulders, and then Animal would jump off the top rope and clothesline the opponent to the floor and pin him. So in that case, Onana would be Hawk jumping off the top rope and try to clothesline Sasa.
I love that Paul can just like describe details from something from 30 years ago, but he hasn't seen an episode of Seinfeld.
I would never peg Paul as a wrestling guy either, if I didn't already know that he was into it. I don't know why. Yeah. But anyway, anyone have any other finishers?
The crossover between wrestling interest and soccer interest in the UK is way more common than in the US. Whereas in the US, the wrestling fans and the soccer fans are two separate groups.
Yeah. Yes.
Fair enough. Okay. Let's go with Baltimore Wolves, who asked, what's the conversion rate between PGMOL apologies and Premier League points, asking for a team in the Midlands. I was trying to, no, but in all seriousness, is this the third or fourth apology in a calendar year? I was trying to remember. It is the fourth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Why are we taking a question from Baltimore Wolves? He's kind of a dick online.
Yeah, seriously. Sorry. I should have scrapped that one from the notes. I was debating. Okay. Michael Moser at LC Simmer _16. Who makes a better keeper, Dawson or Saw? I think he's probably referring to Craig Dawson's headed clearance when Saw came flying out. And I forget who tried to chip him. Was it Rashford? No, it Anthony, was... I think.
Yeah.
I think it was Anthony. Oh, by the way, Graham Lasso hates Anthony. I enjoyed that. Like, finally, there was some commentary bias in a Wolves match that wasn't against Wolves. That was hilarious when they were talking about man of the match, and he was like, well, it's not Anthony. That was great.
Mike and I were actually watching the game together, and it was throughout the game. Every time Saul like came out and was like looking shaky, he was like, Dawson's been so much better. So Dawson had a great game, and he really saved Saw's bacon a couple times.
That brings up a good question, though. If we if Saw gets sent off and we don't have any more subs, who puts on the gloves? Well, I don't think it's Dawson.
I think it's Lamina.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
That's a great question. I could see a scrappy João Gomez performance.
I was going to say, João Gomez would ask at least. He'd be like, come on, guys. And they'd be like,
running off his
like
line,
5'9",
celebrating every tackle. I would love that, actually. I mean, he would get a red card eventually.
Kalajdzic massive. Just he'll claim crosses with one hand.
That'd be the obvious choice, but I'd be worried that he'd get injured. I think he's the right choice, but I'm just going to be sitting there with my heart in my throat the whole time. He's going to get wiped out at some point. I mean, at least Paul will remember that Doherty spent some time in goal during one game, so he's got experience.
Yeah.
Let's hope it never gets to that, and we never have to worry.
It's going to at some point, though. Yeah. Let's be honest. It's Wolves.
Yeah, and it's Jose Saw, who could lose his cool every now and then. Didn't have much to do today, though, gotta say.
Pretty quiet.
Pretty quiet in a good way. Okay, so let's move to Todd DeWitt, who asks, what match day superstitions do you have? One of mine is that if I'm watching at a bar, I will never close my tab before the full-time whistle. That's a very good rule. I very much support that. What do you guys have anything?
So when I'm at the bar and I got this from our good friend, the late Clive Hill, he'd get his one hopadillo for the first half, and the waitress would come and he'd go, no. He'd wait until the halftime to order that second one. So he'd never have more than one. So I started picking up on that. Same beer, Hopadillo. And then when I'm at home, I'm a socks guy. If Wolves are on a roll, I got to wear the same pair of socks. When the Cubs were making their World Series run, I must have worn the same pair of socks watching games for like 3 weeks. My wife thinks I'm an idiot, by the way, for us. She's not superstitious at all.
Now, are these regular socks or are they like Wolves socks?
Oh, they're Wolves socks, yeah. I wore Wolves dress socks today.
Nice.
At home, yeah. So I was wearing shorts, my Free João Gomez shirt, and Wolves dress socks. Paul? Superstition?
Yeah, usually I'm quite a sucker for wearing a particular jersey and thinking that's brought a change in look and then trying to keep up with that. The more recent ones I've had, I didn't really keep it up. Watching it today was my choice of mug for a coffee. So I got a Wolves Europa League one, and then I've got the Premier League one from, I think it was from one of the fan fests or a package that they sent out. So I was usually having one first and then switching for the second half. But I'm out of superstitions at the moment. I need something stupid to pin my hopes on that is completely pointless, but I will think that's really important. So let me try and think of something.
Danny, you seem like a super duper superstitious guy.
That is not the case.
Are you a little stitious?
As Michael Scott said, I am not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. I don't really have anything in particular, but I will say that if I am already wearing, a Wolves shirt and then the lineup comes out and the person whose name on that shirt is not in the lineup, but I have one that is. So like, I'm wearing the Neves shirt and then I see that like Neto is starting or Kilman is starting. There's a part of me in my mind that thinks like, I should wear a shirt with someone who's starting because like then they'll have a good game. I know it's ridiculous, and like 50% of the time I cave to that temptation. But yeah, that's the only thing that comes to mind is I get very like twitchy at the when we get near kickoff, like I'm really undermining this player by not wearing their shirt.
That's a superstitious thing. Right, Alex? I need a judge
definitely.
there. That's very superstitious.
That's what I said. I'm a little stitious.
No, that's a superstitious one.
I said I don't cave every time.
Yeah.
It's it's a little tickle in my mind.
A little tickle in your mind.
I've tried. I really, really have tried to develop something, but I've sat through so many Wolves losses in the past few years that just nothing sticks. So I'm kind of like Paul. It's just like it's really hard to develop it. I mean, I tried the socks like that they sent last year with the international supporters thing, and I was like, I guess I'll wear these. It just like never worked. Tried the travel hoodie, the away every kit. It doesn't matter. So,
did you try the chinos though, in the turtleneck?
You know what? No, I've never worn a turtleneck for the game, but I refuse to now because I feel so scorned.
Are you throwing them out your apartment window, the turtleneck and the chinos?
I should. By the way, did you see the Bournemouth manager? I forget his name. I think he's a Spaniard. He was rocking a turtleneck on Saturday, and I was watching at a bar, so there's multiple games on, and somebody was like, Lopetegui is now with Bournemouth, and I'm like, no, that's not him, but he does look kind of like a dollar store version of you and Lopetegui, whoever that guy is. Bournemouth's another one. Like they so confidently that Wolves are going down. Look at Bournemouth's squad. Jeez. All right. Stu, sorry, it really rubs me the wrong way. Like Rebecca Lowe.
Hey, they're about to get Tyler
Wolves
Adams.
Are going down. Sure.
Oh yeah, Rebecca Lowe can whatever.
What do you mean, surely? Like, who on Forest's starting 11 walks into the Wolves team? Give me a break. Anyway, all right. Stu says, and this is a great question that I feel like we should debate because, Josh, I know you've been planning. I've been also doing some planning. He asked, does the constant corruption make you question spending the better part of $1,000 at least to come over here and watch a game? I find it hard to get motivated to go to Big Six away games anymore, purely for the reason it won't be refereed the same way for both sides. So full transparency, my wife saw a TikTok. This is no longer Stu. My wife saw a TikTok of London at Christmas time that was so festive, where she was like, maybe we should go to the UK in December. And I'm like, well, that would be great because they play 2 games a week in December. And there just so happens to be a week that Wolves are at Arsenal and you got to fly into London and then home against Forest. But Stu's question, I think, is a good one because, like, Wolves at Arsenal, if that same thing happens and Ramsdale comes out and just, like, gives the people's elbow to Fabio Silva, they're not giving that. Like,
Yeah.
It's kind of crappy. I don't know. What do you think, Josh? I know you've been talking about going over. Does, like, the
Yeah,
way it feels like the world is against Wolves, like, make you question it?
So you really have to be going knowing that you're going for the experience and not necessarily for the win or the loss. Everybody knows I'm an Alabama fan. I went to the game in College Station, Alabama versus Texas A&M. This was Johnny Manziel's last season, and they went up 14-0 on Alabama quick. And I looked at my brother, and we had spent like $400 on the tickets, and I was like, did we just spend $400 each to watch our team get massacred? Thankfully, they came back and won, but that was one of those, it's a short trip for me, or even if I had gone to Alabama for it. Whereas if you're flying to England and stuff, you just have to already prepare yourself that, especially since it's Wolves, they're probably not going to win the game. You just hope, I think you're going there hoping that there'll be some goals and it'll be an exciting game. Like today, I wouldn't have, if that game was at Molyneux, the first 90 minutes, even if it ended 1-0, I would have felt like that was a fun game. I'm glad I went.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the end, yeah, that would have pissed me off, and I would have been like, I can't believe I flew out here, you limey bastards. But, Danny?
There is a benefit, though. I mean, I know we had an afternoon game here, but, if this kind of craziness happens on our typical kickoff times, 10 a.m. for me, 9 a.m., whatever, even those early games, it's really not socially acceptable to rage drink at 11 a.m. Whereas, if you're over there and the game is kicking off in the evening, at least you can then go commiserate with other Wolves fans in a pub somewhere. Whereas, you just have this whole day's worth of festering hatred over here. So there's pros and cons.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, would you say that maybe you would not go out of your way to go to a top 6 match? Because what I want to do, like, I went to Molyneux, it was amazing. They did play Arsenal, and it was 1-0, and it was a pretty uninspired performance. So, but like the last thing I think about is like what the result was, But if you're planning an away game, which many people say is like arguably a better experience because being part of the Wolves away crowd is sometimes more of like a, us against the world mentality, and like kind of, that could be really fun. Do you want to go to Anfield? Like, do you want to go to, some of these huge stadiums and put, or like, would you just go like Wolves Fulham, where it's like just like a lot of nice little families and like they're just probably, in awe that it means that much to you. I don't know.
I don't want to go to when Wolves are playing a Big Six, even if it's at Molyneux, just because I'd like a better chance for them to win. Yeah. So when I look at it, I looked at Fulham and I was like, oh, that sounds like a good one right there. Should be a, competitive game, better chance for a win. It's like, yeah, you'd love to see Manchester City, but do I really want to fly over there going, there's a good chance we're going to lose 4-0? I don't want that to me, even more than the refereeing, is like, if I want to go see Haaland and De Bruyne, I'd go up there and watch like Man City Everton or something.
I don't know. It just shows how delusional I am. As soon as I watched that game, the 3-2 comeback win against City at Molyneux, I think that's all I think of in terms of going over there, and the prospect of seeing them play a Big Six team is like, that was such a special moment for me here, watching it literally by myself in a bar that was empty, and I just think like, how amazing would it be to be there for that moment, even if it's, you know, a 1 in 100 chance or less.
Me and Paul and Clive and several of the other Houston Wolves dancing around, throwing shit in the air. That was a good time.
I mean, we've seen Baltimore Wolves after a big win, and the type of damage that can be done. Imagine
a lot of damage.
Imagine if that were in England, where maybe pints are a little bit cheaper, and everyone else
they are. Stu sent
them for a living.
Stu sent me a picture of the prices in Molyneux at the bars, and a lot cheaper. One of the more expensive beers is actually Corona.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting. Well, makes sense. Has to, you know, it's not a domestic for them. I think that says a lot, though, that Stu was the one that brought up this question as far as if guys in the UK are bringing up, man, if I was an American, I wouldn't want to come over here for this shit show because of the refereeing. Like, I don't think I'd say the same thing to Stu. Like, is the NFL officiating is rough, but it's not that rough. So I would be like, oh, is it a question you wanting to come for a New York Jets game? It's really sad that now you're having to think about that because the refereeing is so bad.
Yeah. I would almost think it's easier for us to tolerate because at the end of the day, we're not going on the train back home and we're probably going to stay overnight in Manchester or in Liverpool. And then we're going to be like, well, you know, it is kind of cool that I got to experience that city. So I totally
not having
get
to
why
go into work the next day is nice.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's probably a big part of it. So I feel like it would probably dissuade locals more than Americans from that perspective. And just because you mentioned the NFL, for all the crap that everyone gives instant replay, and they did for the first however many years it was there, I mean, it is infinitely better than VAR. Like
100%.
There is
even the Major League Baseball replay is better than VAR right now.
There is some ambiguity about certain rules, but like there is literally like there's always people used to be like, what is a catch? That was like a thing people on Twitter would say in the NFL. Like, what is a catch anyway? Like, I don't literally know what anything is with VAR, and anybody's guess is as good as mine. And my only inclination was just to be like, well, it's Wolves, so they're not going to give it. And all the United fans at the bar were like, that's a pet, like nobody knows anything. So anyway, that's it for No Stupid Questions. Thanks to everyone who chimed in. You could tweet them at us each week. We prompt them for you on Twitter at the show's Twitter handle at WLWpod. You can also send them in via email. hello@wholelotofwolves.com is the show's email address. So get us there and keep them coming.
Alex, I'm out of whiskey, so give your last little promo for Fosun Day coming up.
Yes, that's right. So if you happen to be in the New York area, the tri-state area, and you're a listener, or if you're traveling this way and you're looking for somewhere to watch the game, we've got a great opportunity for you. Fosun Day is back. I think it's the second time that New York Wolves are doing this, but basically Saturday for Brighton, for Wolves home opener at 28 Liberty Street in the Financial District, downtown in Manhattan, which is Fosun's building. So at Fosun Plaza, we're going to have a massive outdoor watch party with people from all over. So, find New York Wolves on Facebook. On Twitter, you can then find the link to RSVP. It's, Dave and Dan would just like to get an idea of numbers. I know we've got good numbers already, but if you are around and you're looking for somewhere to watch Wolves in a great environment, weather's supposed to be incredible, beautiful summer day, and outside on like a massive screen, food and drink, come find us again at 28 Liberty Street, Fosun Plaza for Wolves Brighton. And let's hope for a better result, and then we could be celebrating in the streets of New York.
Do you provide picket signs for protesting Fosun and getting them to spend more money?
I said something like that last week, and I immediately regretted it. And I was like, they
just kidding.
David Copey probably wouldn't like us to be promoting it in that way, since they're kind enough to let us there. So I would like to view it more as the more we go and support, the more likely they are to pump money back into the club, because we know that this club is a priority for them.
So you're going to be passing around the collection plate, is what you're saying.
So I got two questions here. Number
one, the
one,
Aaron Questwell collection plate, please. We really need a backup fullback.
So I've got 2 questions here. Number 1, is Jeff Shee more likely to show up to New York Fosun Day than Molyneux? And then
Yes,
number 2,
100%. He's got business here, I'm sure.
And then number 2, is this potentially the last Fosun Day?
Oof. There's a lot of Middle East money in Manhattan these days. We could have a lot of skyscrapers we could be doing this at in the future. I'm going to say no. I'm going to be an optimist. What do you guys think?
I don't think so. I think you got another Pro Sunday in you.
Yeah, because I think they stay up, and I think that why are they going to sell a Premier League asset? It's one of 20 in the world, you know.
I don't know. I just have a feeling they're going to try and bail at some point. Paul?
I think the whole Fro Sunday works too well, so let's just keep it for the naming convention.
Yeah,
even if they're gone,
unless the new owners fit within that you can create a quirky name out of the new ownership and hosting a watch party, then Fosun have got to stay just on that basis.
or if Trump buys it, you could just walk down the street, right, Alex?
Oh, don't even speak
throw
that
a
into
Molotov
existence.
cocktail in here in the final minute of the show. Holy crap. Oh man.
I choose chaos.
I can tell.
Danny, how can we find you?
Yep, as always, you can find me at Baltimore Wolves on Twitter. You can also check us out on Facebook. On X, yeah, I'm never gonna call it X. I'm sorry.
Call it X.
Yeah. You can also find us on Facebook. I'll usually post there if we're gonna go out somewhere. Probably gonna head out to Claddagh down in Canton in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So check out there for details on that.
That brings this week's show to an end, good listeners. We'll be back this time next week for everything what happened with the game against Brighton, and then we'll be previewing Everton away, which is Saturday, August 26th. So in the meantime, let's take today's positives onto the weekend, and with everything that you do, up the mighty Wolves.